I am Elizabeth Kingwill, and I live in Jackson, Wyoming. I went to the University of Michigan a long time ago, about 50 years, and I have an undergraduate degree in American Studies and a master's degree in environmental education and resource management. And I went on and got two more, one an undergraduate, one a graduate degree in psychology.
Yeah, I'm George Coling. I am now 72 years old, am retired and living in Western Mass. I was a grad student in the School of Public Health, enrolled in the fall of '69. I became involved with Enact and specifically organizing the activities of students and faculty of the school.
Well, my name is Art Hansen. I'm Canadian. I went to the University of Michigan, completed a PhD in the field of fisheries ecology, and basically one of the things that I did during that time period was to be one of the co-founders of both Enact and the Teach-In on the Environment.
In Enact, I was a first-year graduate student, really new, and I was in a school of natural resources, which was primarily men. I think I was told like 1970, which is when I came, 1969 was the first time they really had any women around. So I was in my first semester, and I began to hear about this teaching on the environment, and I was interested, and I was just doing my coursework and kind of listening. And the PhD student who was supposed to do outreach into the wider community was not doing anything because his major professor didn't approve and thought he should be paying attention to his coursework. And so, since I'd been complaining that no one was doing this, I got asked to take it over.
The atmosphere on campus, I was, I should say, a scientist. That was my ideal, to be a scientist, and that's what I became. But so this idea of activism was quite new to me, I've got to say. So that's on a personal level. But it was activism in the whole society at that point in time, and particularly in university grounds. And one aspect of it, of course, was the war in Vietnam.
I was draft status 1A, which means draft material. I had a lottery number of 51. That meant I was pretty likely to go. I had a fellowship from the U.S. Public Health Service that kept me away from the draft for a year in the School of Public Health. But during the spring of that year, I was getting notices from my draft board back in Central New York that I needed to take the physical and all of that and be inducted. I eventually got a conscientious objector status and heard about the environmental teach-in, and that here was a trained environmental health specialist, kind of, first year in, and they approved my conscientious objector with the affiliate of Environmental Action.
The teach-in itself was a surprise. I mean, all of us were doing our little piece and part, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger. One of the things that happened was that, maybe they could have it in a lecture hall, or maybe they could have it in the auditorium, and then, then it was the Chrysler Arena with 17,000 people, or however many people it holds, plus people outside.
People had become aware of environment, but they didn't really have much knowledge of how to deal with it. Whether it was pollution, whether it was Silent Spring, a famous book that talked about the loss of bird life and so forth. People knew that something was wrong and that we needed to rethink not only the science of it, but also, of course, science and society.
Organizing the environmental teach-in was doing something positive. Yeah, there were a lot of demonstrations and holding signs and that kind of stuff, but it was really gathering of education, materials and fact sheets and all that kind of stuff, and getting the panels together. And it was very, very positive as the counterpoint of seeing this dysfunction of the rest of the country that was sending kids away and bringing them back in body bags.
It was an event whose subject and time had come because there were rivers that were burning and you could see the air. And there wasn't anybody who could really object to a clean environment. And it was, like motherhood, apple pie. It was, a good thing. And so it was amazing how many people turned up. It was really a black swan moment.
I think over the years, now it's much more of a global issue, and certainly with climate change, it is one of the upfront public policy issues, particularly in light of the deniers who are now in charge, who were in this country, who are a lot different from even, Nixon had a lot to say positively. I don't know what he meant, but if you go back, I remember him saying that, we need to address this straight on, and blah, blah, blah.
Well, for one thing, we have a much more holistic view now in some ways, although you've got to remember, and we had our buttons, Give Earth a Chance, and we really thought along those lines, and particularly that shot taken from space of what the planet looked like. That was the first time we'd ever seen that, And so that was a guiding sort of point, give Earth a chance. And that's still the guiding light, give Earth a chance. We don't use that phrase so much anymore, but that's what it's all about. And I guess I'd say that the thing that really was important in relation to this is the science, but not science for its own sake. It was a transformation of science into public policy, private policy of industry and so forth. So all of these things now are much more advanced than they were 50 years ago, for sure.
I think it was more visible. I think our crisis today will become more and more visible, but then you could see the smokestacks. You could see the litter. You could hear about rivers that were on fire. You could not eat the fish that you were fishing for. It was personal, and you could see it, hear it, and smell it. And what we were offering people was a chance to do something about that. Something very concrete, a project here and there. If all you did was recycle glass or walk one day, just here's a whole list of things. One thing, 100 things, contribute to a cleaner environment. So there was a place for everyone to do something.
Sometimes you can't find these things, they find you. But what I found most significant for me in our activities here in Michigan was there was a lot of enabling factors, things that we would never have thought we could do. We did. We just did it. And that's still solid advice today. And look for the enabling situations, whether it's a job, whether it's volunteer work in a community, all sorts of different things. Find ways that are comfortable for you, whoever you are, to make a difference. It's pretty basic advice, but if you don't do that and take that initiative when it presents itself or when you make it, then you end up being in kind of a dull world, a world that you may look forward to some security that you may never have.
Up to the individual to find some kind of conservation, the Ecology Center here in Ann Arbor, for instance, and ask how you can help. Even small towns like Jackson, Wyoming, have, because they're our city council, obviously a little forward thinking, they have a goal to be carbon neutral by 2030. And so they have a plan for our community to be at least contributing in that way.
Follow your instincts. Look for addressing an issue with humor and love and persistence, as Elizabeth Warren would say. Keep at it. It's going to change. It's going to evolve. As you get older, you'll see something you did long ago will pay off 10 and 20 years from now. And I'm an optimist. Things will get better if we all work at it.